All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great week. It is Friday here, and I know I've said this over the past couple of episodes, but it is nice and cool, and I love it. We're getting into fall. Halloween is right around the corner, which is one of my favorite holidays. So I'm super stoked that we're into fall, and I'm stoked for another reason because we have Jackie Coffey with us on the episode today. Jackie is a flipper, a rental. She owns a bunch of rentals. She has a construction company. She even started an escape room, I believe. So there's a lot to go into here. Jackie, thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. I told you right before we got on here, we always like starting with stories and hearing kind of how people got to where they are. Sounds like you got a good one. So why don't you take us to the beginning of your story in real estate and tell us how'd you get here?
Well, so from pretty much a young age, I was drawn towards real estate, and I didn't really know why, but I'd find that out a little bit later in my life. But I decided when I was about 22 years old, 21, that I wanted to flip houses. I, was a single mom, and I was like, man, I have 3 jobs. I feel like I am working so much and not working as smart as I could be. And I was like, I'm going to flip a house. And I had decided to do this, knowing, of course, having no knowledge, no money, no funds, no experience whatsoever, no credit. But I was like, of course I can do that, right? You're in this.
How'd you get the notion? Were you watching like HGTV or how did it pop into your head?
Okay, so, and I don't tell a lot of people this. I used to do a lot of modeling when I was younger, and we were on site, and we were there for a couple of days, and I was watching these people flip a house, and I was like, God, I bet I could do that. But I was still drawn to real estate. And again, I didn't even know why. I wouldn't even know that why until like 20 years into my career, come to the realization. But I saw them and I was just like, oh, I could do such a better job I'm like 22, right? I'm like, I have no idea. But I'm like, look at that paint color. Look at those shingles. I could do better. So I decided I'm going to flip a house. And I know this is going to show my age and I'm fine with it, but there wasn't, YouTube like there is now. There wasn't this plethora of information. There was Google, but it was so limited. So I had to go to the library and I was like, okay, what can I do? What kind of loan can I find where I don't have to have any money and I don't have to have any credit and basically any experience? So I find out that there's, a hard money loan and I'm like, oh, that's great. Doesn't require, it only focuses on the asset, not me. And that's great because I have nothing. So I come back and I start going into the yellow pages. Ooh, it shows it again, right? Yes, the yellow pages. Leave me alone.
That's impressive.
So, I start calling all these lenders and everyone is just telling me no. They're just like, no, you don't have any capital at all. You don't have any experience. And it's just no's. And I get to like 10 no's and then I keep calling. And I think most people probably would have quit at 50. And I just keep calling and I keep calling. And then finally I get to 100 and I'm like, oh my God, I have called 100 people and this is just not happening. Like, I guess I shouldn't do this. So
there were hard money lenders in the yellow books?
Yeah. So there was different lenders and I found the different names. But then what I did was I pulled as many lenders out of the yellow pages as I could. And then I came back to Google because you could still find listings on Google then, even though it was like 2004. So I start pulling them out. And like I said, I get to like 100 and I'm like, this is not working. And I'm and I'll make this story really, really quick, but I'm reminded of something that happened to me. As soon as I'm ready to quit, I'm like, I'm done. This is so hard. I can't do this. My mom had owned a skating rink growing up. And
that's cool.
I was like, yeah,
ice skating or regular skating?
No, regular skating.
Okay.
And so I was like the best skater there, right? I was there every day. And my brother will tell you different, but I really was. So anyways, one day this little girl comes in and she has these amazing skates and they call us for the limbo. And we line up and it's like 30 of us. And I'm really good at the limbo too. I live in the skating rink. So we get down to it, we start skating, and it's me and her, and we're at the bottom bar of the limbo. And I go first, I hit it, I lose. She comes behind me and she sails through it. So I'm like, I'm just done. Like all my friends are there and they're like, oh, you beat Jackie Brown. And I'm just like, I quit. I'm done. So later that night, my mom told me, they were like, hey, she won the world skating limbo championship earlier
Wow.
that
Didn't
day
even
in
know there was a
Houston.
thing.
Right.
Good
I
for
didn't either.
her.
That earlier that day in Houston. So I told my mom, I was like, look, I want to quit. I'm done. I just felt so defeated and I was just ready to quit. At same feeling that I'm feeling now making these calls. And my mom said two things that stuck with me that I think kept this career choice open and an option for me and the confidence to go through with real estate, which was the first thing she told me. She was just like, look, you're going to fail at things. You're not always going to be good at them. You're going to lose. You're not going to win every single thing every time. You're going to practice. You got to get better. She was like, but what you can't do is sit here and feel sorry for yourself. She was like, you can't do it. You were upset about this all day yesterday. To anything more than a day, you're just pouting, and we're not going to do that. So, and then she said something else to me that stuck with me. She was like, oh, and she was like, if we know you'll never see her again, but if you ever did see her again, how would you beat her? And I was like, how would I beat her? I was like, I was so upset and so busy thinking that I can't beat her. And I was in that defeated mind frame of this isn't working. I quit. I don't want to do it. That how wasn't even a possibility to me. It was just, I can't do it. I'm done. You close the door for opportunity, close the door for growth, and that's it. And when my mom said that to me, she was like, how could you? And I was just like, wow, how? So immediately I'm like getting creative and I'm like, she had different skates on. She did this. She balanced differently, right? So suddenly that fire was ignited in me to not quit. And I didn't even care if I saw her again. I just needed to beat the bar that she beat, right? Like I had to beat that bar. And so I get it and I'm skating regularly and I can beat that bar no problem now. And then almost a year later, guess who walks back into my skating rink? And this is like the moment I never knew that I was waiting for, right? She comes and I am so much like nicer this time because the Lord fed me a big old humble pie. And we line up for the limbo again, they call it. And of course, she had won for the second year in a row the limbo championship. So we line up, it's down to me and her again, and we're at the one I lost at. She goes first, she makes it, and then I go and I make it. So now we're at a tie. So they hold the bar under the bottom bar, right? Like they're just holding it there like 2 inches less. So this is lower than I've even practiced, I think, than she's practiced. So she goes first and she hits it. Now it's my turn. And I look over at my mom and I'm so scared. I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrified. So I start skating. I go down to my split and I turn my head. I close my eyes and I had just sailed right through it. So just like that, in my mind, I was the unofficial limbo skating championship for the year, right? So fast forward back to present day. I'm in that moment. I'm thinking about that moment as I'm telling myself real estate is hard and I'm just barely starting. I'm like, this is so hard. I want to quit. I'm not making progress. I'm not doing it. I'm too green. I'm starting to tell myself all of these self-limiting beliefs that aren't necessarily true. So I scrap everything and I start asking myself, I'm like, all right, how can I do this? How can I do this differently? Throw everything away, get a whole new list from Google. I start looking for lenders outside of my city, outside of my state. I didn't really look at interest rates. I was like, I'm not going to even look at that right now, at what their percentage is. I'm just going to broaden my spectrum. So I keep calling and I get to 120, 175. Then finally at call 202. And I still know him. His name is Shane. And I don't want to give all his info, but he was the guy that got on the phone and was like, absolutely, I would love to work with you. And I was like, oh my God. And I was almost more proud to get the accomplishment than the accomplishment itself. But that changed the entire trajectory of my entire career. That was it. I was like, that was such a moment. And don't get me wrong, my first flip, oh man, absolute chaos. I mean, every mistake. It was the hardest moment on the first flip was an absolute mistake, but it wasn't a mistake. I made every mistake you would probably a regular investor would make on their first 5 houses. I just condensed that all down to one.
You got to learn fast, right?
Absolutely. But that was such a big moment for me and not giving up at that moment and just saying, how can I do it? And that's changed how I've done business my entire career. As soon as my back's against the wall, I'm like, okay, it's not a can't, it's how can I do this? I've just got to readjust. I've got to find solutions and I've got to make changes.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially in real estate because things always go wrong. This has been echoed across so many episodes. Things will always go wrong because you can never predict everything, and so things are going to pop out of the woodwork, and you just got to look that problem in the face and figure out, all right, now we got to solve this problem, and they're just going to keep popping up and keep popping up. So having grit, having the determination to get through it and find a solution is one of the key skills in real estate. And it sounds like you had a really good role model in your mom, telling you, you just got to keep going. You got to find the how, and find the solution to the problem.
Oh, absolutely. And her and my dad are two really hard workers, but it's also, I mean, my brother is, he was such an inspiration to me. My older brother, Scotty, who, I don't even want him to hear this because he's going to be like, haha, I'm winning. Right. But I mean, we were in junior high, and the moment I knew I needed to be an entrepreneur was when I saw him in junior high. He was the only kid. I was in seventh grade. He was in eighth grade. And every Christmas he would sell poinsettias. And he did that until he was able to buy a Jeep. And he was the only kid I knew in junior high to buy a
Wow, that's a
Jeep.
lot of poinsettias.
And well, granted, my dad owned a greenhouse, so he got all the poinsettias for free.
Okay, okay.
But it didn't matter. It was seeing, which is what I have found in my adult career, is the same common denominator in every investor I've ever met, which is they just don't give up. They just keep going. They set the goal and they keep going until they get it. And that's what he did. And it was just so amazing to see, oh, you wanted something, you just set that goal and then you worked towards it, and he moved in silence until he got it, and then the accomplishment spoke for itself.
Yep.
So that was a big moment for me in seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so important to have those role models growing up, or earlier in your life. It doesn't even have to come from your family. It can come from a friend, somebody close in your, an adult that's in your life. But just having that model to show you that you don't give up, you just keep going towards your goals, is so important. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of real estate investors had that growing up. Your brother and your mom were it for you, and it's good that it got you to where you are today.
Yeah.
So speaking of today, you did that first flip. It was a shit show. They always are when you get started. But since then, you've done 500 flips. You have, I think you said 100 doors under management right now. So
Yeah.
how did you go from that first flip to, an established investing business?
Well, and I'll tell you this, initially, I didn't want anything to do with any rental properties or investment properties. I saw friends were doing it. I was like, man, that looks like such a hassle. Just, being honest, I was like, I don't want to keep up with that. And then I started in 2004. I started a little bit before that, but that's when I actually got my first flip. So I was still pretty green in 2008 when, everything kind of crashed down a little bit. And that's when I did one of my biggest flips. For me, I had bought the house for 120,000 and I actually put 120 into it, and I was selling it for 675. So
wow, that's a lot for 2000. Well, I guess 2008 before the crash. Okay.
Yeah. So it was right before it. And so, I mean, I have all my eggs in this one basket, and it was terrifying. And I thought to myself, I was like, I'm doing these flips, and the flips are great. I mean, the flips are great now. I still will do flips, but it depends on what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve. Starting out, you need the cash flow, you need to get built to where you want to be. But then in 2008, I was like, man, if I barely sold the house, I got it sold before everything crashed. But I could see that, and I could see, how can I set myself up as a real estate investor that the markets aren't going to affect me, whether it's cold, whether it's hot, doesn't matter what the market is. How can I set myself up that I'm not necessarily affected, or it's going to end my business? I don't want to be closed, or have to sell everything off. So I thought, I can do flips and rentals. If I do both, then I can just keep doing that. And no matter what the market's doing, people always want to rent. And then if it's a great market, I can always sell. So that's what I started to do in 2008, was to acquire rental properties and to keep them. I made a little bit of cash flow, put that back into my business, put that back into myself, and never wasted any money. There was no Ferraris coming in. You get this really big payday, and that kills me when I see people doing that. I'm like, stop it. Go buy 8 more houses instead of an apartment building. But that was ultimately the goal. And then as I started acquiring rental properties, I just continued and continued and continued. And then I found all the, I don't want to say the loopholes, but as you start doing it, you find the different ways that you can get more properties with less money, with zero money down. There's so many different ways that you can do it. And because I'm going to say this and it's going to, oh man, some of your listeners are going to get mad at me because I am not the refinance and pull all your equity out of a property. I'm
Okay.
not.
All right.
I have literally pulled equity out of one property once.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that because as I start, one, I like the small payments that I get, right? I like having my $400 payments and I'm renting this house for $1,800 or
Mm-hmm.
$1,600. But I like having it there and available for me. So when I want to do bigger things like the apartment building or something like that, I don't have to take a partner on. I can go, I can pull that equity out myself and I can do it myself. And that's my preferred method. So I know a lot of investors are like burr, 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 but that's, I know I'm not your super conventional investor because I like to let my equity sit there until I need it. But then again, I also know how to buy properties with no money down. So I don't necessarily need to pull that cash out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. We just had somebody on who does single family rentals in Louisiana. And that was his strategy. In fact, he waited until he paid the house entirely off until he bought
Yeah.
the next one. Granted, those houses were a lot cheaper,
Yeah.
but still it's a strategy. And I like it because, having that monthly paycheck definitely it's a nice cushion to land on. I know the big ones are fun, getting,
Yeah.
100, $200,000 check. It's nice. It's exciting, but having those small 400, 500, $1,000 checks every month, that is my preferred method as well.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of single family, and most people when they get into single family, they buy 10 rentals, and then they're like, shit, managing this is really hard. There's got to be a better way. And then they jump into commercial, they jump into self storage, mobile home parks, multifamily, whatever. You've stayed down the single family route. Why did you choose to continue down and continue buying single family, and how do you manage that large portfolio when all the doors are kind of spread around?
Yeah. Well, so originally I had my properties everywhere, right? Like I would buy in Dallas, I would buy in Houston, I'd fly, I'd Fort Worth, everywhere. And this is much earlier on in my career. I would just buy the rentals wherever. So what I would do is I would get a flip. I would pay off 2 or 3 small rentals, right? And then what I started to do was say, okay, I want to hone in on this area a little bit more where I am. I want to be a little bit closer. I don't want to have to fly to my properties. So I sold the properties, the single families that I had in like Houston and like way in North Dallas, further than my comfort zone. And like I said, I'm a little more unconventional, feel like. So what I'd started to do was put them in a closer proximity and buy properties that were in a closer proximity to me. That way it was easier because I don't use a property management company. I don't do that at all. So
Mm-hmm.
I have my crews that are here. I have my, 2 or 3 of my really good electricians. I have 2 or 3 of my roofers. I have my HVAC guys. So when I initially get the property, I make sure all the big things are fixed. We have a new roof, we have good plumbing, we have good electrical, good HVAC, everything that needs to be. And then after that, we just check anything weekly that's needed, and then we send out our guys, and I send out my crews, and I've worked with them for so long that we just do everything in house ourselves, and I prefer it that way. Also because I like to be a little bit more hands-on with my properties. I like to know what's going on. I want to be 100% in it. So it was a lot easier when I sold some of the properties that were a little bit further away, because now if something's going on, I can just go by and see it real quick, and it's easy. So, but I do have multifamilies. I do have small apartments, and I love those too. But I still like my single families. I know that I'm going to do an apartment building, a small boutique apartment coming up soon. But the single families are easy, and most people know me in town, so they'll just come up to me and be like, hey, I want to be done with this house. They're going to tear it down. Do you want to buy it? So, and I do a lot of creative financing with other people too. So for example, there was one guy, he wanted me to sell his house, but he owed child support. So I paid him under the table, and he sold me 2 houses for 10 grand. So
Wow, that's a good deal.
yeah, it was a great deal. So I just try, when someone has a situation and they come to me, I always say, hey, if we can't do this conventionally, what can we do? There's got to be a way. So, yeah, I like to keep everything in a closer proximity. That way I can see it. I can send my crew out and I know exactly what's going on, and we manage everything in house.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely something to be said to centralizing your operations. I've done it myself where I just see deals. People send me so many emails, and people, I get calls from brokers, and I just see deals all across the country. And I'm always like, I just want to do it. But you got to say no. You got to set your flag in the ground and choose your location, because once you build your team in a certain city, it's a lot easier to manage that portfolio because you have your team set, and that's the hardest part is getting a good team. So,
and it's easy when you're 20, when you're 20 or even 30 and you're flying everywhere and you're running back and forth. Not that you even necessarily have to, but I'm so hands-on and I like to. So it was just like, man, now that I'm, in my later 30s and now I'm turning 40, I'm like, I don't necessarily want to go everywhere. But, you also solidify your career a little bit better. And now you start picking and choosing what you do want. You're not that 20-year-old that's like, yeah, just give me the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I used to like getting on planes, and now I'm just like, nah, I'd rather not. I'll just stay here.
Yeah. I got computers that can do most of the work for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I just took a peek at the clock. It looks like we have run it down. Before we move over, though, you wrote in your application to the show that you guys do escape rooms. That is really interesting to me. I got to hear at least a little snippet. Why escape rooms? How'd you get into it? How's it going?
So I built the Great Escape in Waxahachie, which is Texas' largest escape room. And the way that I got started, because I told you I do own other businesses. I took my daughter, I think she was 12 at the time, to an escape room for her birthday. And I remember getting ready to go, and I'm like, this is going to be stupid. It's going to be like puzzles on the wall. And it was the first time I went, and I was blown away. I was like, that was so much fun. It was creative. And she was like, Mom, you should open one of those in town. So I come back, I start looking at numbers, look at the demographics, and I'm like, I think this would work in town. Okay, let's just open it. I mean, I don't have to know anything about anything other than I am fully ambitious enough to know that I can research and figure it out. So I started to put a plan together. I started to research. I started to get as much information as I could. And I was like, all right, we're going to open one. So I actually had my daughter help me. And on this project, because like I said, my mom used to have a skating rink. So she ran the day to day. I did all the business end and everything on the back. But we three built this with ourselves with our hands. And because trying to get a contractor to say, look, when you open this door, you have to touch this and this over here, and that door is going to open and this is going to close is impossible. And everything is good in theory. So every time I tried, I was like, all right, we're just going to have to do this ourselves. So I built it. And the goal was to get it built and then sell it within about 5 years or at its peak. So we could do the apartment complex. And that's what happened. We sold it last year, and now we're getting everything together for that one. But it's just, whether it's real estate, whether it's escape rooms, I think it's just having that entrepreneur mindset of we can do anything. So it doesn't matter what it is. If it would have been a chocolate factory, I'd be like, yeah, as long as the numbers are good, let's dive in and see what we're made of. Because I think as entrepreneurs, we kind of feel like we constantly have to push ourselves and see what we're made of. It's like, oh, I did that. I bought 4 houses. Well, now can I buy 6? Well, can I buy this? So you're always trying to level up, I think, and see what you're made of in a more of a you versus you scenario. So that's why the escape room, just all thanks to my daughter, and it was a blast to do. And yeah, absolutely loved it.
I feel like the hardest part there is actually coming up with the clues and like the puzzle. Because I've been in some, and it's like, how did you guys come up with this? This is crazy.
Oh yeah, it was a ball doing that, and luckily, because I came up with most of the clues, all the feedback was really good. Everybody really liked it, and I was like, oh, who'd have known I'd have been good at that? So it was really so fun.
What are the numbers on an escape room? I know we're going down a rabbit hole here, but what are the numbers on an escape room look like?
So this one here, because we had 7 rooms, and now granted, we were opening 2 rooms at a time, so we do 2 rooms, but on average, we were doing about 50,000 a month. So we were netting about 50. Yeah, we were netting about 50. And once we got the 7th room done, we added putt-putt in there, and it was at its peak. And I was like, now our numbers are great. Let's go ahead. And I mean, and the labor on it, you have, high school kids, it's all just minimum wage, and it's just the weekends. I know there's some in Dallas that open all week. We didn't do that. We just opened Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it was doing about 50, give or take. And then it was always a little bit slower in September, slower in January. And other than that, it was doing really well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, I will take that opportunity to push us into the quick question round. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's do it. It starts with books, or really any form of education. It could be a movie, it could be a podcast you like, but I need 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom and then one for real estate.
Well, okay. So this is, I am dyslexic and I don't read a lot. I listen to audiobooks, but I will say this, and I'm sure it's kind of cliche, but I've had my kids read it. I've had my husband read it. I absolutely love Rich Dad Poor Dad for anyone who's not in the financial mentality,
Hmm.
because that's the way I've always seen things. That's the way I've always viewed things. And when somebody else can put it into words so eloquently, it's really nice. So I forced all of, my kids and, like I said, my husband to read it as well. So I love Rich Dad Poor Dad. And everything else, there's not a ton of books that I constantly am in. I try to look for information constantly online. There's so much of it. So I think if you look at one subject at the next, if you're looking at flips, you'll find information on that. It's just constantly feeding yourself. But I do tell people, don't get wrapped up so much into reading all the books and not doing. Just
Yeah.
get out, start doing, and then as you do it, find a book that correlates with it.
Yeah. Do you have a specific like source that you like to go to for if you have a new subject that you want to learn? Is there a do you go to YouTube? Do you go to audiobooks? What is it your kind of bread and butter?
Yeah. I really like YouTube. I like things that are short and to the point.
Hmm.
I don't mind paying for specific courses, depending on what it is, because I'm always happy to pay for any education. But I'm very cautious of what I buy because so many people are like, "Hey, I'm going to sell you on how to do this." But I do like to go into YouTube because most of the time there's a lot of free information there, and you can just find things you don't know.
Yeah.
So
Cool. All right. Next question is for your younger self. Let's go back to the Jackie who was just getting started so many years ago. Go back to her, look her in the eye, give her one piece of advice moving forward.
this is easy. So when I was younger, you get in those modes, especially when you're in real estate, that there are these high moments. You're like, I sold it. This is great. And you're super excited and you want to make decisions, or something didn't work and you're angry or frustrated. And I was very quick to make decisions on the spot when I was younger.
Mm.
And there was a point when I got a little bit older that I told myself, something had happened. And I was like, all right, from this point going forward, whether it's a high or whether it's a low, I am going to give myself 24 hours before I make any decision. No matter what it is, I have to sleep on it, because even if it's good emotions or bad emotions, it doesn't matter what it is. I need all of the emotions to die down. And then the next morning when I wake up, there's a lot more calm, there's a lot more clarity to make, like I said, any decision, good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the first person that said that, but I feel like that's really good advice, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because there are so many highs and lows. You'll
Yeah.
feel like you're unstoppable one day, and the next day you'll feel like, what did I do? I've ruined my life. But if you just wait until the next day, give yourself 24 hours, those high emotions, those low emotions, they'll even out, and you'll be able to make a much more rational decision. So that is
Yeah.
good advice.
Thank you.
Next question is about the US. It is a big place. There is tons of opportunity out there. Give me the single metro you're most excited about investing in today.
Um, let's see. I mean, I just love, I know the US is huge. So I gotta say, I really like Dallas. If you're talking about areas, I like Dallas Fort Worth. I love it. Even when everything crashed in 2008, it was still a good area, and there was still growth. There was still selling. There was still movement. I've never had problems with rentals. I've never had vacancies. I love right where I am. I just really do. I love it. And I will stay here until the day I die.
Yeah. Yeah. DFW is a very solid metro for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is about finding deals. It all starts with getting in contact with the seller and penning that purchase agreement. So, what is your favorite way to generate leads and find new deals?
Oh, my favorite way. So I have a couple, and I'll make them short. I love going on to MLS and finding the houses that have been on there the longest. I really
Yeah.
do. And just being absolutely creative for this house. Kind of like I said, I had that big house on M Streets in Dallas. It was my biggest flip. That was going to be a tear down. No one thought we were going to do it. The square footage wasn't enough. And I was like, man, it's such a good area. I don't want to do a new build. So I took the house and I just doubled the entire square footage. So I like going on there and finding properties like that. I love finding vacant properties. I love it. I like the research of tracking it down on the taxes and who owns this and will you sell it to me? So I have wholesalers. I mean, I have deals, people come and find me, but I think for me the most fun is finding the vacant properties, or finding properties that look like they don't, they're so unloved anymore, and then just going and trying to buy them, because there's a little bit of hustle in there still, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was doing single family, I feel like I did every type of marketing, but I really feel like the most effective was literally just driving around town and then looking at the houses, because you're in the area and you're driving anyways. And so just taking note of the houses that looked crappy and then sending them a letter, because more than likely it's an absentee owner. It's somebody who has a tenant that is just a nightmare and they want to get rid of them. And so those are the opportunities. Those are the people that are most likely wanting to sell. And so,
Yep.
yeah.
And I'll tell you this, I've bought about 8 properties with post-it notes, kind of like how you said, sending them a letter. I won't send anyone a letter. I will literally drive and I will put a handwritten, hey, this is Jackie, I'm super interested. And I've bought houses with post-it notes. So I feel like, and they've told me as well, they're like, I don't feel like I was like just a number or a client. Like, you came and you found me and you wrote a little note and wrote it on my car. So my post-it note method is that's still one of my favorites.
Damn, I haven't heard of that. That's a good idea.
I had to be creative when I was younger. I didn't have any money or any experience.
Yeah, post-it notes. It's 1 cent. All right, next question is lessons learned. Not every deal that we get into goes the way we expect it. In fact, most of the time something goes wrong and we got to learn, we got to take that opportunity to learn a lesson. So what was a deal that went a little bit sideways for you? And then what was the lesson you pulled from it?
Oh gosh. I would say to pay attention a little bit better to the market. So we did have a house that I was selling. This was a beautiful big house. I try not to overspend on the budget, but it was not also it was a great area. It was right by the lake. So I was like, hey, this is going to be a fantastic deal. It's literally, you can look down the road, see the lake, but it's not on the lake. And I was like, I'm going to go in there and get this one. I'm going to sell it about just maybe like 10% below market value. So it'll sell fast and I'll be done with it. Well, about 2 blocks, down, this is in the country, so it's not a blocks, but it's probably, I don't know, 200 yards away. There is a water treatment plant. And oh my gosh, I just assumed it would be fine. I just assumed no one would care because I wouldn't care. And so I bought the house, renovated it, put all this money into it. And every single person that came to view this house was like, I have a problem with the water plant being right there. So as excited as I get, and I still thought about buying this house, it definitely made me stop to look, okay, I definitely need to pay attention to the area just a little bit better and put a little more emotion to how the buyer is going to see these properties. So I ended up, I didn't lose money, but I probably made like $5,000 on that house. Ultimately it was not a win, and it was such a hard decision, lesson to say, I need to focus on that just a little bit more and not just the house. So that was a big one, is finding out the other things that are around it that could affect it.
Yeah. I feel like I've had to learn that lesson a few times. Real estate is so hyper local, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about residential or commercial. I bought self-storage facilities that the greater market was fantastic. Double-digit growth. But that specific block that I bought the property on was bad, and I didn't know that. And so you got to call your property managers in the area, call the police station, figure out how many calls do they get for this area, and just get all the information you can to really make an informed decision, because one block could be fantastic, and then 800 feet later, you're not going to get any renters. So that's just how it goes.
Yep.
All right. Next question is about money. It does take money to make money in real estate. So what's your favorite way to raise capital?
So I usually don't, I say this, I usually don't have to raise capital. When I was starting, and I know a lot of people don't like hard money lenders. I know a lot of investors like, I'm not going to do that. It's 12% interest. And to me, that's just insane. You can use 100% of somebody else's capital, to buy the house, to renovate it, and then you're selling it, and you are 100% using someone else's money. So, and I do know how to get people, get it with 0 down, but I still love hard money lenders. And when I was younger, that's all that I used. And I still use some occasionally. I'll still use my own funds, but I don't really attempt to raise capital. I'll use my lenders, and then everything else I will go to my banks, and I will use any of my other properties as collateral. So I'll be able to use it as collateral, get into another property with no money down. And so I haven't really had the need. So I know that doesn't greatly answer your question, but when you're, like I said, when you're younger and you have no money and no credit, you start finding ways to make things work in your favor. So
I'll say your favorite way is seller financing, being creative about making a deal. I like that. All right, that leads us to the very last question. This is for the listeners. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. This is a 2-parter. Where can they find you? And then what can they expect when they reach out?
Absolutely. They can find me. My website is jackiecoffey.com. And I do a lot of keynote speeches. So that website is a little bit more dedicated to that. But I talk to everybody. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. Just reach out. And I work with people all the time. I don't expect anyone to pay me, but if you ever get stuck or anything like that, and you send me a message, it might take me a little bit to get back, but you can message me and just say, hey, Jackie, this is what I got going on. What do you think? And I try to answer those because I do get a lot of those, and I try to answer those as much as possible. So my email is on the website at jackiecoffey.com, and you can find me as Jackie the Happy Investor on everything else.
Perfect. I will put those links in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out to Jackie, just click the little more in the description. It'll pull down that full description, and there you can find her links. All right, Jackie, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. For everybody that's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me, Gabe at therealestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just give us a like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.